Thanks for joining me again for another Pixie Talks review vlog.
Pixie Talks, reviews and vlogs at Pixie Talks.
So last week, I talked a little bit about my favorite live-action films, and the week before that, I talked about my favorite animated films. So, what's left to talk about? Well, while I was trying to piece together my list of favorite live-action movies, I quickly began to realize that actually some of my favorite pieces of filmmaking aren't in fact movies, but miniseries. The miniseries is an odd beast, half movie, half TV show. They are far too long to be considered movies, but they aren't designed to go on and on and on forever until the ratings drop like a TV series either. The episodes in themselves aren't whole and complete stories, and put all together, they just play through like a 6 to 10 hour long movie that happened to have been broadcast in segments due to its length. And in general, I tend to find that miniseries can tell better stories than movies can, just because they have the time they need to really flesh out both their plotline and their characters. So without further ado, I give you the miniseries that I grew up on and love to pieces. First up, The 10th Kingdom. The 10th Kingdom was sort of before its time. It was a show about a fairy tale world far before fairy tales were in vogue. If it had been airing today, I'm sure it would have had no problem getting the sequel that fans desperately wanted but never got. The general premise is that there is another world made up of 9 kingdoms in which all of the fairy tale stories are basically their history books. When a prince who had been turned into a dog by an evil witch queen escapes through a magical mirror into our world, a young girl and her father get caught up in all of the goings-ons, unwittingly being brought back into the magical world. They have many adventures as they try to find a way to defeat the evil queen and then get home again. It's a basic premise, but it was absolutely magical in its execution. It didn't take itself too seriously, and there was a lot of really great humor, while also being dramatic enough to carry a great, engaging story. But what really made this series magic was how amazing all the characters were. You cared about them, you got to know them, you wanted to follow them, and you were invested in them. These are some of the most memorable characters I've ever seen, and they make this series work so well. 10th Kingdom is a great show, and if you are totally into the current fairy tale trend, it's definitely worth taking a look at.
By the island in the river, flowing down to Camelot, 4 gray walls and 4 gray towers overlook a space of flowers.
Anne of Green Gables. Where do I even start? This was one of my favorite novels as a kid, and this miniseries does an amazing job at bringing this novel to life. It's true to the book in every way imaginable, from the events of the story down to the most important part, the characters. The characters are not at all over the top, but are beautifully real and relatable. You really get to know them over the course of this series, and you become so engrossed in their lives that you barely notice you're watching a movie. It's more like actually getting to know someone, and that's something really special. The performances delivered here are impeccable. There's simply nothing to criticize at any turn. I always loved Anne and found her to be someone I personally could relate to. I loved her flair for the dramatic and her infatuation with daydreams, and I suppose I can even relate to her fiery temper. She is passionate, and it comes through in absolutely everything that she does, for good and ill. Everyone else in this story makes you fall just as madly in love with them as well, and you will spend your time laughing and crying with them. I implore you to not only read the book, but also check out this absolutely beautiful piece of filmmaking and performance. It will touch your heart and inspire you. Oh my gosh, I can't even begin to tell you how much I love this series. C.S. C.S. Lewis's brilliant books brought to life in such a touchingly real and vibrant way. Okay, now I do have to clarify something right off the bat here. Most people do not like this version of the Narnia Chronicles because it's old and it was made on a low budget, so yeah, the effects are not good at all. Visually speaking, it really looks more like a filmed play than a film, and that's just something you have to be ready for going in. The animal characters are all people in giant animal costumes, and the little special effects there are pretty laughable from today's standards. But I love these ones, and I love them more than the Hollywood versions for so many reasons. They are far more true to the original books, and far more true to the original characters. The Hollywood version not only did a lot of weird stuff with the plot line and the events to make things more edge of your seat, but they also did some stuff with the characters to make them more conflicted, where conflicted means self-centered and awful. This version takes its time and tells a story that remains true to the heart and spirit of the originals. It's also beautifully acted and beautifully costumed. They worked with what they had and made some beautiful film within their limitations. And I'm sorry, I love Warwick Davis's version of Reepicheep so much. I just can't with the Hollywood version. And lastly, the 1995 version of Pride and Prejudice. I've seen many other versions of this story, of course, and I have read the book, but there isn't a single other version that is anywhere near as entertaining to me as this one. And I have to say that it is because of the brilliant performances delivered by Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy and Jennifer L. as Elizabeth. These two were brilliant in their roles and had so much amazing amounts of chemistry with each other that the entire film is pure magic. The appeal of this movie is also mostly in the verbal sparring matches the characters engage in. I've had people tell me they find Jane Austen really, really boring, but this is because you aren't paying enough attention to the gloriously witty dialogue. Every jab and barb in these incredibly civil arguments is hidden under so many layers of formality that they can be a little bit hard to catch. But if you do catch them, this is some of the best written dialogue ever. The characters are gloriously brought to life with some stunning performances, and the story is carefully fleshed out without losing any of its dramatic flair or punch. A seriously amazing piece of work, and worth watching if only to catch all the glorious nuances of wit. And those are the miniseries that I treasure and hold most dear. Once again, I vastly prefer this format over movies or TV. It's a format that I really wish we saw more of in North America. Anyways, that has been my favorites lists. I hope you've enjoyed them, and I'd love it if you were to subscribe for more. Add me on Facebook and Twitter. Towards the end of the week will be a new toy vlog, and next week will be another Adventure Time video. So I guess I'll see you then. Bye!
Woolen mittens, brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorite things.